Yeah, it's crazy. I can't believe we're like so close to the end. But anyway, on a happier note, yeah, we're doing PHP. Before we do anything else, I want to get you guys downloading something because it's like 130 megabytes, and so it may just take a little while. So please just go to that link, and then you'll get something like this, and then just click the appropriate one. So for basically all you guys, that's going to be just click the OSX one and just let it download. You don't have to do anything. Once it downloads, just let it do its thing. Okay, so while that's downloading, we're going to talk about what PHP actually is. Just a little bit of background. PHP was the first programming language I learned after JavaScript. So JavaScript was my first and only front-end language. PHP was my first back-end language. So it holds a very special place in my heart. Who here has done work with PHP before? All right, we got one. Cool. Yeah, using WordPress doesn't count unless you're actually writing PHP, because WordPress is all sorts of like, oh, drag and drop and everything, and that's fine, but that's not really development. Not to be a snob, but really. Okay, so yeah, what is PHP and why does everyone hate it? Hate in quotes. So PHP stands for personal homepage, because when it was created, it was made by a guy to use on his personal homepage. At that time, everyone was using this technology called CGI. You may still see some sites with CGI bin somewhere in the URL. And that was kind of tedious, so this guy basically just wrote a little library that automated some stuff for him. And he thought that was pretty cool. And some other people thought that was pretty cool, so they started using it too. And they were like, oh, it would be cool if it had this functionality added onto it. So they just added more functions onto it. And that continued for many years until PHP became what it is today, which is basically a massive collection of about 10,000 functions. So PHP is like not really even a programming language. I mean, it sort of is, but it's more just like a big library, a big collection of functions. So these functions are all in the global namespace. By comparison, when you, let's see, JavaScript has like 5 functions that are on the global namespace, I think. It's like parse int, parse float, and maybe a couple others, and like that's it. So if you really like to memorize stuff, PHP is the language for you. Yeah, so PHP is it's a back-end programming language. So it's a server language. So you know how like with handlebars, you do like in mustaches artist.name or something. And then before the server sends it out, it replaces that artist name with Billy Joel or whatever. So your user doesn't see the handlebars, it's just whoever's writing the code sees the handlebars, right? Same thing with PHP. So PHP changes what the HTML looks like before it sends it out. That's my definition of a back-end programming language, something that changes HTML, changes what the user sees before the user even gets it. So it's not like JavaScript where the user gets it and then it changes things. It changes things and then sends it to the user.
Oh, so it's like 10,000 functions of JavaScript?
Yeah, except it's not JavaScript. Yep, different. It is a different language, but it looks an awful lot like JavaScript. We'll hold that thought because we're going to actually do some PHP later on, obviously. Okay, so PHP is, yeah, lots of functions, and so because of that, it doesn't really have objects. So let me show you some examples of PHP. So let's see. So you know how in JavaScript you have something like array.length, right? Well, in PHP there's no dot anything. There are no properties, there are no methods, everything is just functions. So if you have an array, for one thing, it'll be $array, I'll get into that in a minute, and then if you wanted to find its size, you would do something like count array. So that's a start, but then it keeps on going with that. You end up with stuff like, okay, so you have one function, and then a function inside it, 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 and it just sort of keeps on going, and you get a lot of this. So I'd say this is the biggest reason why people don't like PHP, is because you get a whole bunch of nested stuff, and it starts looking really ugly really quickly. There are objects in PHP now. It's a pretty recent thing. But even then, so let's say you have something called array and you want to get its length, you would have to do this. And writing this guy right here, this little arrow thing, is really annoying because it's like on opposite ends vertically of my keyboard. So there are several reasons to not like PHP. But there are also lots of reasons to like PHP. So PHP is the first programming language for a lot of people. It was Jesse's first after JavaScript. And that's because it has a super low barrier to entry. To run PHP, you don't need to type nodemon. You don't need to do anything at all in the command line. I did PHP for 2 years and didn't touch the command line one bit. I didn't even know how the command line worked for the first 2 years I did PHP. Also, because there's nothing to run, I mean, basically the whole thing is like a big ERB file. So you get something like, let's see, where's an example? Like this guy, where you have some HTML and then you just plop your PHP right into it, just like this. All PHP looks like this. It always starts with a PHP tag, and then you put all your code in there, and then you can put as much HTML or whatever around it as you could possibly want. So there's no like separate file the way there is in Express. There's no index.js. There are no just RB files the way there is in Rails. PHP and HTML are always just smushed right together. Like handlebars files, like ERB files, everything is that. And that makes things considerably easier in some ways because you have everything just sort of all together. You don't have to worry about all these different files talking to each other. It's very sort of visually based. It's all just sort of about where things are in your HTML. And so that's pretty nice sometimes when you're making things that are relatively small. So let's see. Also, it's everywhere. So PHP has been around a long time. And if you buy a hosting package from, GoDaddy or InMotion Hosting or whatever, they're probably going to give you a hosting package with Apache running on it. Apache is the server that runs PHP. And most servers in the world run Apache. So it's a pretty safe bet that when you buy a server or hosting package, it's running Apache. Therefore, you can put PHP on it without having to do anything else. So when I bought my first website, I bought a hosting package, didn't need to configure anything. PHP was already running on it, and I could just put my PHP files on there, and off it went. Again, I didn't have to touch the command line or anything else. Super, super low barrier to entry. And it's everywhere. It's easy to embed. And it also makes a lot of back-end concepts easy to understand. So let me take this thing that I showed before, and I'm just going to save this on my desktop for a second. Let's call it hello.php or something. And then let me show you what this looks like when I render it in my browser. All right, here we go. So this is what we see. All of this stuff. What I printed out was this $globals thing. So this shows you all of the global variables that are currently going on inside your PHP script. If I do like PHP, I don't know, name equals Robin, and then refresh this page, if I scroll down, you'll see that name Robin has just showed up down there. And there are a couple nice things about this. You see this get and this post up here? I hope that's pretty familiar. If I add a get parameter onto the end of this URL, so if I do like, I don't know, animal equals wombat, now you see animal wombat show up right there. And if I were to post something to this page, that would show up immediately as well. You can also see all of my different cookies. So this is from when I was grading Jeff and Maureen and everyone's project, this I Have to Go session. And then this Project 3 GitHub thing, all of these random other cookies that I've accumulated while I was on localhost. Everything is just sort of hanging out right there for you to look at. And you can see all this information about who's using your app too. You can see like what kind of browser they're using and what their IP address is, when they checked it out, and all this different stuff. So that's pretty nice. So PHP just sort of throws everything all up front. There's not all this sort of elegant hiding things and putting them in the appropriate place. It's all just sort of there, and you can get started right away. One thing to note while I'm here, so let me not print out this globals thing. I'll just print out echo name. And then you see Robin show up there. This is actually an HTML page. if I look at the source code, here's all my HTML, and here's that Robin inserted right into it. So if I change this to an H1, there, now it's an H1. And note that you don't see the PHP tags in here. Okay, I'm a bit to your point. You don't see the PHP tags in here. It's executing this code and changing the HTML before it even sends it to your computer. So your user has no idea that you're using PHP or anything else. Their only clue is that maybe there's a .php up here in the URL. So again, super low barrier to entry, really easy to just sort of mix things in with your HTML, and you don't have to worry about this, you know, big, elegant structure the way you do with Express and Rails. So those are PHP's sort of big selling points. Let's see. Yeah, so on that note, I use PHP for rapid prototyping more than anything else. Using JavaScript, you can't write files. Correction, using front-end JavaScript, you can't write files. And you can't really even get files in unless you do stuff with Ajax. PHP, because it's a back-end language, it can write files, and it can put stuff anywhere on your computer. So that's a pretty nice thing. If I need to just, you know, convert something in a CSV file or something really quickly, I'll do it in PHP. I don't need to create a whole index.js or do npm init or anything. I just create a .php file in Atom, write some code, and I'm done. And then I just open it up in my browser, and off I go, and that's it. So that's also pretty nice. Let's see. One example is this PHP computer navigator thing I made. This is actually something I have on my computer that I use to navigate around my computer. So if I go to localhost/users, now you're looking at the users folder on my computer. So that is, let's see, right here. And I can go into my folder, and then I can go into my programming folder where I keep all my programming stuff. And in here, this is where I keep all my GA stuff inside this GA folder. And so this is handy because I can look at anything on my computer through my browser, and I don't have to like jerry-rig it or do anything weird. So I use this all the time, and it's just a PHP script. One last thing to show off is just this obligatory visual aid, because these are fun. Yeah, so PHP, people crap on it a lot because it is an ugly language. It evolved organically, so it's sort of like how French has a whole bunch of irregular verbs, or let alone English, where like every verb is irregular, because it evolved organically. PHP evolved just by people slapping stuff onto it and then shipping it off and sharing it to other people. So it's very organic. It's not a pretty language, but it's easy to learn, it's easy to read, and if you want to just get something small done in a hurry, it's a great way to go, which is why so many people use it. So that's sort of my introductory PHP spiel before we get like through installing it and everything. Any like big questions about PHP? Max?
On the scale of dynamic to static, where is PHP?
What do you mean by dynamic versus static?
Like in terms of just, you know, like at the end of our URL, we put colon name or colon word. Like if it uploads to the database, depending on what the word is, what it is.
I'm still not entirely sure what you mean. Could you Slack it out? Okay, Matt? So it was originally, and then something interesting happened. They got 1 billion users, or however many they have, and so they really needed to be performant. So what they use now is this thing called, I think it's called hip hop, where it's no relation, where it looks like PHP, but it compiles to C. So you feel like you're writing PHP, but then you run it through a compiler and it turns into C, which is like super low level language that like Mac's operating system is written in and goes really, really fast. And that's because so many people have familiarity with PHP. So it's sort of a way of like bridging both worlds. And I'm aware of like a couple other sites that do that too. I don't remember what they are, but I'm aware of them. I saw another hand over here. Yeah, lots of things are written in PHP. I mean, Facebook was written in PHP, 4chan was written in PHP. What? Slack was written in PHP. Yeah, lots of things are written in PHP because it's most people's first programming language. Matt?
So would you say that it's like it's lifeline as far as like being
No, I think PHP is here to stay. I mean, it's like how Microsoft is here to stay. I mean, it's got such big market share that I don't think it's going anywhere. It has gotten a lot of flack in recent years, though, just with the explosion of different backend technologies. Because now people can choose from much more elegant languages like Rails and JavaScript, where you don't have to worry about 3 million nested parentheses. Well, okay, you do anyway in JavaScript. Okay, like Rails, where you don't have to worry about 3 million nested parentheses. But yeah, I mean, so many people use it, and it is so approachable that I don't think it's going anywhere. Matt, that's all right.
When you say rapid prototyping, what do you mean?
So I mean, like, if there's just some quick thing that I need to do that I would want to automate. So I'm thinking of like, one thing I've done before is if I have a bunch of, data in a CSV, that's why it came to my mind, and I want to turn it into JSON, then I would do that with PHP. I would use PHP to read the CSV file, split it into a big array or whatever, encode it as JSON, and then write a new JSON file. So CSV file comes in, JSON file comes out. I could do that in, Express or Rails or whatever, but that's like using a steamroller to kill a fly. I mean, that's like way more overhead and stuff than I really need. So I just use PHP. All right, so let's get you guys installed with this XAMPP thing. Is this still downloading for anyone? No, good? You're good? All right, awesome. Okay, so go ahead and open it up. It should be a .dmg file. And then that's going to open a new sort of like hard disk image on your computer. Just open that up and click on the like install XAMPP thing or whatever it is. And then it's going to walk you through some instructions. The end result, so everyone look up at me for a second because I want to show you what the end result will be. You'll get something like, there we go. You'll get something like this. And so if you get this, then you're good. And you can just sort of hang out. But let's take a little bit just to make sure everyone gets set up with this. So go ahead and just start getting it to work. And then we'll bring it back together in a minute. Yep, I see you. I see you. Is it a like high-level question or just an error or something?
It's not even coming up.
Okay, I got you.